do you prefer bird calls or colorful plumage?
Oh, colorful plumage. Gosh,
Yes.
I love me a colorful bird. It's so cool.
What's up, College Station? I'm Grace Hollowell, and today I'm joined by Laurie Brown, the Recreation Supervisor from our Parks and Recreation Department. Hi, Laurie.
Hi.
Welcome to our new set.
Beautiful.
We are out from behind the desk in these nice, comfy chairs. For a new era of What's Up College Station. We're excited to have you here. And as you came in, we had some excitement that relates to the topic that we're going to be discussing today, which is birding programs and our Bird City conservation efforts. And as you were walking into City Hall, you noticed a little bird flew right into the window.
Straight into the window.
Oh,
so
poor
it looks
guy.
like it's a little yellow warbler, which is a pretty uncommon bird, for our area, which is significant.
Yeah.
Luckily, he's still alive, so we're going to take him to a local rescue group to see if we can get him back and ready and flying again. So.
Yes, and that is something I mentioned. You're like the bird whisperer. I feel like every time there's something with a bird or you have a bird with you, whenever I see you,
yes.
something. I'm a stray cat whisperer. I don't know why they always find me. They always come to me. So we each have our little conservation and animal rescue
there you go.
niches. But to start things off, let's kind of give a little bit about yourself and what you do.
Sounds good. So I am, like I said before, the Recreation Supervisor. My official title is the Recreation Supervisor of various centers, which is kind of fun and funny, but looking at it. But my job responsibilities are two very different pieces, and so it's kind of fitting in some ways when we look at it. So my first job is that I am the Recreation Supervisor for Lick Creek Park and the Gary Halter Nature Center. And so that involves mainly, working on programmings, doing the day-to-day running of the Nature Center, managing and training staff, and really trying to create conservation education programming for people to come out and enjoy. And so those are really fun events where I talk about they're conservation light. They all have information for people to bring into it, some fun interactions where people are actually doing conservation and may not know it, like throwing a mud ball full of seeds into the garden and not realizing, hey, we're gonna throw two mud balls in one stone and try to get our work done. So conservation light programs that we do. So things like Mud Day, which was last weekend, which was super popular. Of 516 people, I think, was when we were finally done. Then we we do things like Park in the Dark, which is an amazing camping program.
Yes.
We have 2 of those coming up in November, and then also our Haunted Hike, which is coming up in middle of October. So those are kind of our fun sort of entry-level programming. And then my second part of my job is that I help organize the Conservation Advisory Group for the Parks and Recreation Department and really many of the departments within the city of College Station. So water is part of that program.
Yes.
Community development is joining us. So we've got a lot of pieces and parts within that group that are city staff, volunteers, community members and local conservation groups, and then just people who just care about nature. So.
Yes. And that is something that the core of what you do is education and conservation. Why is conservation, or how did you get into that field? Have you always been a nature lover?
I've always been a nature nerd. I will say that. Tried and true. I grew up in I'm not going to name the city because I don't want anyone to get upset, but I grew up in a chemical plant town.
Okay.
So when, pretty lack of nature, not a whole lot, but, my parents brought us out often to places like parks and, state and national parks, were our favorite places to go. We owned a small ranch in Caldwell, and so that's where I live now, is out there in Caldwell. So, love nature, love getting involved. And I think I really got started. I worked at the San Antonio Zoo for 12 years, in the, managing their volunteer programs and also their entomology collection. So I'm a bird nerd, but all true, deep down tried and true, I'm a bug nerd.
Bug nerd, okay.
So I tell people.
I I am very much
things.
bug averse, so I
can always help somebody recover.
Yes.
It's always good. But yeah, I was a bug nerd, and then I got kind of headhunted by Cibolo Center for Conservation and worked in their conservation programming for a few years, and then moved back into College Station to be near family and to help take care of family. And now I found an amazing job at the Nature Center, and now I'm here. But yes.
Yes, and we are so glad you're here and have that enthusiasm, because that's something that's really important, especially for young aspiring naturalists, or just kids in general. Sometimes they learn better when they don't realize they're learning.
So true.
Like with Mud Day, when they're just playing in the mud, with that, conservation light, as you mentioned. Sometimes the best way to learn something is by doing something fun.
Absolutely.
So what is something that you wish people knew about your department or your area of expertise?
Oh gosh, I think that one of the things that I wish people know is that everybody can do so much good with just small actions.
Yes.
So things like turning off the lights at night to help with lights out, so that way it reduces migrating wildlife like birds, bats, and invertebrates from hitting your windows at night. So turning out your night stuff from 11 to 6 a.m. can do a huge benefit. Things like recycling, things like reusing items are really important, but also things like recording your pictures. Like if you take a picture of wildlife, upload them to iNaturalist, and that becomes a part of a city list that any researcher can use and learn more about the wildlife that we have here in College Station and all those things. So conservation is for everybody, from planting native plants and seeds to taking photos with your iPhone. It's really for everybody in every stream of life.
Yes, and to the extreme of rescuing a little bird that hit your window, contacting a local organization. Yes.
Exactly.
So what is something that people might be surprised to know that goes along with what you do?
I think some of the most surprising things is just how large a community is really, grabbed onto this. I think starting the Conservation Advisory Group, we started with 18 people in a room, 3 years ago, and I think it was November of 22 is when we started just tapping into the idea of Bird City. And there's well over 200 people in that group now that, work on different projects and different pieces. And there's room for, like I said, there's room for everybody that wants to join. So it's not and conservation isn't necessarily a new thing in the area, but I think that the one thing that the Conservation Advisory Group has created that's really important is they brought unity to all those pieces. Mm-hmm. So we can help the bird people, help the naturalist, help the native plant people, help the water conservation people.
The bug people.
The Mayor's Monarch Pledge is one of those things that the city is working again to re-sign again. So it's coming up next year. So those are fun things that we all are excited about. So yeah.
Yes, so much to be excited about, and we have a lot to talk about today relating to the specific area of birds and bird programming.
Absolutely.
We've mentioned Bird City, so to kind of kick off today's episode, the topic of today, what does Bird City, Texas mean, and can you explain why it's so significant to our College Station residents?
Sure. So Bird City efforts are, it's a conservation designation by Audubon, Texas Parks and Wildlife, through the state, and then it also is a piece of a larger conservation world designation through Bird City Networks, which is through American Bird Conservancy. So it's not a tiny program, but it's a very, very competitive and hard to get program. We are one of 15 cities that have this designation, and it's a fight. It's easier to get than it is to keep, and so I think that that's a piece that people don't know about and what that focuses on really. And so it looks at conservation education pieces as one piece, where it's doing bird-friendly festivals, birding events, teaching people how to go bird, and then really meeting communities where they're at to plant native plants, to learn about birding, to upload their information, their pictures and data that they've learned to community science programs, and so it's that whole piece there. There's another piece piece, though, that's really indebted to habitat restoration and preservation. And the city is, doing really well. That like Lick Creek Park in its own is a wealth of species. I think when I last looked this morning, because I was like, okay, let me look beforehand, we have a park biota that anyone can look at on our website and be able to just and it gives you a species list from iNaturalist of what everybody has seen and when, which is kind of cool. So it's kind of cool. We had over 2,500 species as of this morning, which is exciting when we look at that. So that is really significant when we look at, the space and the acreage that Lick Creek Park is and the diversity of ecosystems within that little piece of property.
And Lick Creek is something that I feel like is a hidden gem for our city that you might not even realize if, you're a student here, you're not from the area, you just kind of stick to campus and Northgate and Century Square. Definitely go out to Lick Creek Park because I was blown away the first time I went there. I had no idea that something that amazing was right in our backyard. So what role does the Nature Center play in supporting the local birding habitats like Lick Creek Park?
Sounds good. I think the biggest thing that we do is that we host community events. One thing that is kind of exciting is every first Saturday of the month, we host the Rio Brazos Audubon Society, who comes out and does birding walks. And that's anybody of any birding level, even if you don't even know to hold the binoculars the right side up, you're ready. You can come on out. There's no shame. We have binoculars to borrow, even if you just want to try it. So there's a lot of good birding that can be done. And they start about 8:30 in the morning. And head on out. And they have lots of great volunteers that are ready to, they're ready to join groups up and get them out there. And I think that's one way that we do it. They've been doing that program, or Rio Brazos Audubon Society has been doing that program for about 15 years or more, which is pretty incredible, to be honest. So apart from birding programs, we also try to advertise conservation initiatives like Lights Out and teaching people to turn off their lights at night, but also talking about window glare, because sometimes those super shiny reflective windows look like trees and bushes, and smaller birds like little yellow warblers that hide in trees and hide from predators see those and they dash into the window not realizing that that's a problem. And sometimes when a bird hits the window, sometimes it dies immediately. Sometimes it's injured and you don't see it and it'll fly off and then it'll die later of a head injury of some kind. So that's why, making sure that we get birds treated quickly is, an important thing. But even more so, it's looking at trying to install anti-glare things to your window. But the cool thing that we're doing is trying to meet people and teach people about that. So we're doing a window painting contest. And I think that's super exciting. And so that starts October 1st. And so we're having people paint their windows to where it reduces the glare. And you can paint it however you want. So to be friendly for birds. We had somebody that just dipped leaves in paint and put them on the window. So things like a water-based acrylic paints or temperas wash right on off, and you can just get like one of those plastic paint scrapers and wipe them off your window, and it won't damage your windows at all. But it can save a heck of a lot of wildlife.
And it's the perfect time to do it because we're entering the Halloween season, so you can make it pumpkin themed or Nightmare Before Christmas themed, whatever you want. And then at Christmas time, change it to a snowman or something like that.
Absolutely.
But that's a great idea, and it's very, very helpful to these birds. Like you said, it always makes me think whenever I hear about a bird hitting a window. I'm a 90s kid. The Windex ads from the 90s about the birds hitting the window. Because the windows are so shiny and clean, they didn't know it was there. But it's more than just a TV commercial. That happens regularly, and especially here in College Station, we have a lot of buildings, a lot of windows, we just noticed this morning.
Right, and it affects billions of birds. I mean, and that's the thing that when we're looking at is that over the last 25 years, we've lost about 1/4 of the bird population, which is alarming. And there are things, happening in the world that, some people on a small scale can't control. But in your homes and things that you can make better. So like planting native plants is a great thing, providing food and homes for birds. But also, learning about how to keep your your place safe for birds and other wildlife. So we have cool things here like bats and butterflies that migrate through here as well. So migration happens about 90% of migration can happen at night, which is pretty cool. So.
Yes, I know. I am a big fan of nocturnal birds like owls.
So cool.
I always love listening for them. And the fall is specifically a migration season for a lot of birds. So what makes this time of year so special for bird watchers in College Station?
So bird watchers in College Station, where you see a larger species diversity at times during point migration times. So birds that, and you'll see higher densities of birds that look like they're here all year long. Like for example, like cardinals migrate.
Yes.
And people are like, but I can see a cardinal here
Anytime,
all year
yeah.
and anytime. And so cardinals that may be migrating here from like Canada may find College Station as their best source of a winter home, where some are like, nope, I'm going to Central America.
Yes.
So depending on how those birds decide and where to go, you get a bulk of a species diversity, which is pretty cool.
And I've noticed too, I'm from up north, and the most populous bird that I see back home is the Canadian goose. And they are kind of, they're cute, but they can be a nuisance sometimes. But I've noticed them here in the winter time. And that was something that I never really thought of before, living up north in the cold, that, they do disappear during the winter.
Do.
Where do they go?
Yeah,
they come here.
So it's amazing. Like I was telling someone the other day that some of the birds that, migrate here, you'll have them and they'll be helping you out down south eating crop pest and things for coffee farms and things like that. So it's like, making sure that, you're drinking bird safe, sustainable coffee is always a good thing too. So there's a lot of different ways you can help.
For sure. And are there any specific species that people should keep their eyes out for when they're birding?
Sure. So we have two incredibly rare species at Lick Creek Park. One is the Swainson's warbler. It's a cute little brown bird, but it has a hauntingly beautiful call. And that's how most people identify that bird, is, they're walking around, they hear a really cool call, and they pull out a bird app and they can hear it. We've had a few really lucky naturalists take pictures of them this year, which is really cool. And then the second bird to look out for is the Kentucky warbler. It's a completely yellow little warbler with some black markings, and it's just adorable. And the same thing, it lives in places like Lick Creek, which are deeply forested habitat with a creek running through it, is what they absolutely have to have in order to nest and survive. So both species nest in our park, both species call in our park, which is quite beautiful. And though it's still pretty late, it's late in the year for Swainson's warblers to be calling. Someone heard them, early on this week, so they might still be there. Okay,
so we've mentioned some of the programming that we have, like the Birding 101 and the window painting contest, but what birding programs do we have going on this season, and who can participate in them?
Sounds great. Well, I did want to mention, too, with Birding 101, we also have a Spanish Birding 101, which has been new this year, but we did it, early September, and we had quite a few people attend that one, so it's really exciting. But December, that first Saturday in December, will be our second Spanish Birding 101, along with English Birding 101. So, pick your language.
Yes.
So that way
and
those
the
are great
Spanish
too.
class, it's too great if you're trying to practice your Spanish or learning Spanish, as well as if you're a native speaker. If you're learning Spanish and want to sharpen up those skills, I would suggest going to that one to kind of see if you can learn more and definitely spot those birds.
Absolutely. The other thing that I would look at too is that we are offering birds specifically focused classes centered around responsible bird feeding and housing, which is a big thing. It's like, hey, bird feeding can be really good for nature if done correctly. And it can also be really harmful. Like if you leave your hummingbird to mold, that can damage and really harm those birds. So it's looking at those different topics. So we've got some birding classes coming up, which are super exciting. So our next one is going to be our Blue Bird Lunch and Learn, and that's going to be at the Nature Center on October 5th. So teaching people about how to put up a bluebird house, how to get those little bluebirds of happiness in your life. And so that'll be a really cool place. And proper feeder maintenance and how you attract bluebirds to your feeder, which is really cool. And then we also have the Christmas bird coming up, which is going to be at the Myers Center. And that's talking about cardinals and why you see cardinals on all the Christmas stuff and why they are really North America's really bird that's synonymous with the holidays. This beautiful red bird. And they're here in College Station during the holidays. So that's always kind of a cool thing. And then coming up in the spring, and I'm just going to mention a few of these because I know some people are really excited about, we have purple martin houses and how to build purple martin houses and community housing for those. So if you're doing a gourd system or any of those, coming up at the Nature Center on January 21st. And then we have a hummingbird class just in time for the big spring hummingbird migration on March 4th at 10 a.m. So, and more classes to come on those. But yeah.
Yes, that is exciting. And the purple martins are something I know that has been a hot topic recently.
They are.
We have seen a lot of them. So this specific class for building other housing options for them is something that's very important and that anybody can get involved in to help with their migration. So how do these programs help families, students, and nature lovers connect with the outdoors?
I think one thing that's really important is that we want to provide, a space for people to come to in a way that people can connect to the to programmings, to birding, to conservation in a truly authentic way. So something that they can do that's easy and something that you can do that, really relates to your life, because there's so much that can be done and it's not realistic for everybody to do everything perfectly. And that's the one thing, is we're not asking everybody to do something perfectly. I think our real ask is to try to get the hopes for the community to embrace conservation imperfectly.
Right.
And so we can move together and make great steps imperfectly together.
Yes.
And we'll learn and do all those things as we go along. And I would really like to urge, businesses, schools, school groups to join our window painting contest, because that's going to be super exciting. And, as you've seen, schools and businesses, libraries all have shiny windows.
Yes.
So, and, reflective windows. And so that's always a thing that can be super helpful.
And are there volunteer opportunities for people who would like to be more involved than just doing the basics?
Yes. So we provide a lot of volunteer opportunities, at the Nature Center, and in some of our other locations, in parks. We offer a second Saturday plant pull. So every second Saturday from 9 to noon, we do an invasive plant pull at Lick Creek Park, where we go out and we remove plants like Chinese tallow, vitex, and non-native milkweeds, and things like a burr clover out from and Bermuda grass. Oh my gosh,
yes.
I'm starting to go, oh my goodness, Bermuda grass. So we're starting to remove things out of the gardens and grounds. We pull those out, and then we also process native plant seeds during those, hand out native plant seeds, and we also pass those out for free at the visitor center at Lick Creek. So if you come into the office, be like, hey, I need some seeds, we'll pack you up some stuff and send you on your way. So, which it's kind of a good timing for this educational segment too, is that planting your native plant and wildflower seeds is usually best done, I always tell people, the day after Halloween. So that's the best kind of targeted time to start, planting your native plant seeds. So come to the Nature Center, get your plant seeds.
and kind of make that part of your holiday tradition of,
Absolutely.
Okay, day after Halloween, take down all the fall and Halloween stuff, put up the Christmas stuff, and plant my native seeds.
Exactly. So, and I think that's a big thing, is that seeds are usually a barrier for a lot of people for doing conservation homes, because they can be expensive, or they're farmed up north, where we're not up north. Even if it's a species that is native up north and native down here, if it's farmed up north, not all the time will those seeds grow down here. So if they're locally grown, locally sourced, they were grown at Lick Creek Park. They love hot, boggy, swampy weather and can take it. So, and obviously did so well that they'll produce seeds. So we want the community to know that, hey, come pick up your seeds and do your thing. So
Where can people find out more about everything we talked about today? I know we covered a lot.
Absolutely.
So where can people find out more?
So there's a whole lot on our Bird City webpage that I would definitely recommend people going to. It's got a list of our conservation advisory group partners, so people can look at the things that they do. So join our plant sales, all of those types of things, and join our events. But but also learn about how they can get involved in conservation. So everything even fun from birding list, so birds to look out for, to things that they can do at home that are important to avoid threats for birds and all that type of stuff. So the Bird City page is great for the city page. And then also the parks page or the Gary Halter Nature Center page.
Yes.
There's lots of good stuff on programming. We want to invite everybody to Park in the Dark, invite everybody to Haunted Hike and all of our programs coming up. So, and definitely if there's ever a question, you're welcome to email me, which is lbrown@cstx.gov.
Or stop into the Nature Center.
Absolutely. Pop into the Nature Center and someone will help you.
Yes.
So, yeah.
But before we go, we have a quick game of rapid fire questions, all related to birding today. So quickly, off the top of your head, when I say these phrases, tell me the first thing that comes to mind, okay? Do you prefer a field guidebook or a birding app?
Oh, an app.
Yes.
Replaces so many books, I'll tell you.
What is your favorite app?
Merlin.
Mine too.
Yes.
My aunt recommended that one to me, and I use it all the time.
So good.
Okay, do you prefer local resident birds or migratory visitors?
Ooh, that's hard. I'm going to have to give you my favorite two, one of
Okay.
each. So my favorite local resident bird are screech owls.
Okay.
So they're non-migratory. They stay all year. In fact,
Yeah.
all of our owls do, which is super exciting. Or the majority of our owls do. So they stay here in College Station. So providing homes for owls is super important. And then my favorite migratory bird are actually black vultures.
Okay.
So they're so cool. And they
Yes.
travel in big old whopping groups. And we'll probably see the entire vulture population for North America as they head on down to Trinidad and back. So
Yes.
it's super fun.
Okay, do you prefer the fall migration or the spring migration?
Ooh, both are different. Spring's pretty hard because you get breeding plumage colors, which is beautiful, where you get big, like painted buntings in their male plumage colors, which are absolutely beautiful. But fall is unique in the amount of species and the amount of time that you see. And it also, the fall migration for birds at the heaviest time coincides also with monarchs' heaviest
Yes.
time. So it's pretty impressive for both migrations to happen. And so to see all those things, but yeah.
And do you prefer bird calls or colorful plumage?
Oh, colorful plumage. Gosh,
Yes.
I love me a colorful bird. It's so cool.
And finally, do you prefer solo or group birding?
Group birding. And group birding for many reasons. One, it's fun. And
Yes.
you can teach other people, and I think that it's infectious. As soon as you start, teaching someone about, a cool bird, they learn one, and, it goes from there. And you can share that excitement of seeing a child with looking at their first cardinal, or
Yes.
also the safety, making sure hanging out in groups with binoculars, you look like a bird in group. Hanging around by yourself with binoculars, you get some questions. So, but yes.
Alrighty, well, thank you so much for being here today, Laurie, and thank you so much for all you do here for the city and for our local and migrating species here in College Station.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
And that's what's up.